Hello and welcome to WTF Theater, where we will be watching all kinds of strange and public domain things and try to get some laughs from it. This video is about probably the most awkward dinner parties I've ever seen, so sit back and enjoy my first attempt at this. A similar Maservi Productions. Dinner Pratty, copyright 1945. Similar Maservi? Whatever. Produced and directed by Edward C. Simmel. Original screenplay by Joseph E. Johnston. That's what I call my junk.
This sitting game on table manners.
Their seating game of table manners? What? Was that even English?
Home for a birthday party. She has been to any number of little parties like this.
And they were all imaginary.
The first time she has given a party all by herself. Like everyone else, she thinks that her etiquette is perhaps not perfect, but good enough so that there are no glaring errors.
Her etiquette is basically non-existent. We're talking like cavemen
here. She
here.
deserves a word of congratulation. But the housekeeper must tell Betty she has noticed.
Oh, Betty, you fucking idiot. You put the napkin in the wrong place. Oh, and the butter knife too? You're a failure. Get out of my house.
And a water glass.
A water glass?
Small matters.
Looks like milk to me.
When they show whether or not your habits of etiquette are correct. See if you notice right away when someone is incorrect or is definitely correct.
We will do that.
Betty's confidence is shaken a bit, and she has doubts of her correctness. Should she have preceded her?
Oh, excuse me. I could have gone around the front of the table, but I choose to be rude instead.
Should Betty have used place cards?
Place cards? God help you if you sit Rob next to Rose. All hell will break loose.
Betty with her chair is Bob.
Bob, you rude fuck.
That is being celebrated, and his host. He seems to feel at ease and just act as she always does.
Narrator? Narrator, you feeling alright?
And put her in his belt. Could that be alright?
Put it right next to his junk.
I'm quite certain of the way they open their napkins and place them in a half fold in their laps. They seem to be really at ease.
At ease? This looks like the most tense dinner ever.
Really started. The main thing is that they should enjoy each other's company. Betty and Bob aren't worrying about their mistakes for a moment. But in the back of their minds, they realize they will have to pay more attention to their manners. They know that the object of correct etiquette is not to make life formal and dull, but to make it fully enjoyable.
They do not want to be a Bob.
For each act of etiquette, as in a man's assisting a lady with her chair, or the order with which people are...
At the order of which people are what? Did you have another stroke there? What is it? Tell me!
Bob is hungry.
Bob hungry. Bob eats food. Roar. Food. No, food.
Now that the soup is served, Betty sees that the crackers are passed. Floyd passes
the crackers are so stale that they're basically chalky and weird.
Should he have helped himself first or not?
Yes. I mean, no. I mean, does it really matter?
What about that?
Bob, one more mistake and I'm throwing you out of your own dinner party.
Before they begin. Dorothy too starts, and they all...
Narrator, you alright there?
But naturally, the guests give no indication of having noticed any error on Bob's part, since that in itself would be impolite. As the relish dish is passed, Bob takes a handful and puts them on his service plate.
Bob then proceeds to lick the rest of them and mark his territory.
Then Bob notices that the others have placed their relish differently, and changes them from one plate to the other, knowing there is a reason, but...
Alright, we'll just put those right over there, and just even it out a little bit, just, yeah, that's perfect.
But having made the change, Bob is glad to see Betty has noticed that he corrected himself. All is well again with the party. No one's enjoyment is being interrupted with any problems for the moment. Betty now is running into some problems of her own.
Betty has explosive diarrhea, and moving from her chair means catastrophic disaster for everybody.
Isn't one of her problems because she isn't even aware of it. But she is aware of the olive as a problem. Is there a correct way of eating an olive? Shouldn't you just pop it into your mouth and eat it? But then, how do you take out the pit? With your fingers? And when you have the...
You blow as hard as you can in the middle of it until it pops out and shoots Bob right in the eye.
Confidence in his way, but also too many fingers.
Too many fingers, what?
You might try Floyd's way. Betty hopes that she doesn't look as awkward as she feels.
Yum, yum.
Now,
Betty looks absolutely disgusted by this olive. Look at her. She's like, blech. Gross.
Dorothy is breaking her celery before taking a bite.
Dorothy's a bitch.
It has always been just celery.
That
You
bitch.
weight it in whatever lengths you
Now I have to copy her.
Is it easier to handle in shorter lengths? And does it look like a smaller bite when you dip it in the salt and then bite off a portion?
Honestly, you're hung up about eating celery? Dip that fucker and shove it in your face. Problem solved.
Bernie and Helen don't seem to be concerned with any problems.
Gah, Bernie, what's crawling on your face? Oh, that's your unibrow.
Of himself. Helen is even tipping her soup plate for a last sup. Can that
A last
be
sup.
correct? Certainly her manners aren't interfering with her enjoyment of the party. As host, Bob is expected to serve the meat course.
Oh, how do I use these again?
Does the serving.
Let me see. This one's a spoon. No, wait, that's a fork.
But if you were in
This one's a
Bob's
knife.
place, would you know
And then I
positively
got
what to
it.
do?
Oh, wait, there's a
Which
spoon. I
serving
can.
implement should he use?
Maybe I can cut it with the spoon.
Should he just go
No,
ahead
wait,
as
that's
best
not
he
right.
can?
Stab.
Dorothy is looking away so as not to notice.
Dorothy is looking away because Bob is an embarrassing failure, trying to cut the meat with a spoon.
But he can't hesitate forever. That
Stab.
amount seems too much. A lady is not flattered by being offered a portion the size that might appeal to a hungry lumberjack.
That's an insult to hungry lumberjacks.
Betty is worried for Bob, but after all, he is trying.
Oh well, I guess I'll take some of this burnt
Everyone
black
learns
mush
by
now.
experience,
And we'll get
even
the
when
spoon
mistakes are
again.
made, and one isn't
And
at all sure anything
oh
that he
god,
is
why?
doing.
That's horrible.
Bob
But we
wonders
have
if
to
the
eat
portions
it.
he is serving are now too small. Should he give a large portion to the men and small ones to the ladies?
No.
Or should he serve about this amount and let the guests return their plates if they wish a second helping?
But asking for a second helping is against
Now
dinner
Betty is about to
etiquette.
serve the
It's like
salad.
creating a dinner
Some new
paradox.
questions are arising. Can she use the implements for serving the salad correctly?
Can she lick the utensils
And
after
what
using
size
them?
should the portions of salad be?
Can she just take random handfuls and shove it down her gullet?
Is she getting a proper assortment? As Betty passes the
Hey,
plate,
this plate is for
they
Bob.
assume the
I gave him the
plate-
worst parts.
Bernie and Helen act as though everything were going smoothly with them. And so really it is. In spite of Betty's worries, there are no mishaps.
In spite the air feeling so tense that you can cut it with a
and Dorothy
spoon.
are enjoying themselves. Bob, you notice, is not starting first this time. He waits with the others for Betty to start. Here is the kind of fun that they all thought of when the party was planned.
This is fun, awkwardly
Having a
sitting
good
in
meal
silence and
together
worrying about how you
and
eat your
enjoying
celery.
one another's company. The errors that have been made haven't taken the fun out of the party, and we must remember to give them credit for all the things that have been done correctly. For every mistake made, a dozen things have been done correctly.
Except for Bob. Everything
Bob
about him is a
feeling
mistake.
more confident of himself. He seems to remember that it is correct to use his knife for cutting lettuce or tomato if they are served in pieces that are too big for a proper bite. What do you think? Is he wrong, or is he right?
Even if Bob is right, he's basically wrong.
But the person with confidence isn't necessarily the person who is correct. Up until this minute, Betty has been confident that a person should butter his vegetables with his knife. But now that Betty sees Floyd buttering his with his fork, she isn't certain.
Betty, really? You were just yelled at about a butter knife. Don't you remember? Use the butter
It
knife.
seems safer to follow Floyd's example. If he is correct, then she will be too. Bob is swinging from one extreme to another. 1 minute he is uneasy, the next overconfident.
1 minute he is uneasy, the next minute he's threatening Dorothy with a spoon.
And is acting as he usually does, in telling one of his favorite stories.
The waving of his knife and fork is actually Bob's way of communicating that he is ready for war and battle.
At the same time, they manage to continue eating while their food is warm. Bob isn't letting the story interfere with his eating either. So let's try counting the number of obvious blunders. The waving of his knife and fork about. Talking with food in his mouth. Monopolizing the conversation. But it is an exciting story. It's about a trip up in the mountains. And then,
Oh, Bob, what the hell? You're uninvited from your own party.
Kind of an ending to the story that Bob had in mind. But it is quicker and maybe better. At least it stopped Bob from making any more mistakes. Betty, too, has discovered that she had forgotten a couple of items of behavior.
Stupid Betty.
She is thinking that perhaps she and Bob both need to be embarrassed a bit to make them admit that their manners aren't as good as they should be.
This is equally as embarrassing to me.
Bob may be thinking the same thing, because he certainly looks as if he has decided to make a lot of changes.
Bob also looks like he shit his
The
pants.
others, of course, say nothing. Betty decides that the first thing for her to do is to regain her poise. Just act as though no errors had been made. But she will
It
be
didn't
more
happen.
observing of her
It
own
didn't
manners
happen.
than those of others, too. Betty feels safe in her way of eating a roll.
It didn't
and
happen,
enjoying.
right?
Is there anything in what Bernie and Helen are doing that would get your attention right away?
Yeah, Bernie still hasn't shaved that
Was there
unibrow.
anything in the way he helped himself to more jelly? How about the way he holds his knife and fork? Or the way he cuts his meat? And takes it to his mouth with his left hand.
No, not his left
When you are
hand.
eating,
Bernie, you
do you
savage.
take the meat to your mouth with the fork in your right hand or your left? Is there a question of correctness here?
I mean, does it
No,
really
it's
matter?
also
Just put the
using her
damn
left
food in your
hand.
mouth.
Betty holds the fork in her left hand while cutting the meat, and then passes the fork to her right hand for placing it in her mouth. This is zigzag eating. She has noticed that the British and continental people usually use their left hand.
Huh, those silly
Now that
Brits
she
and their
is taking
zigzag
the
eating.
manner seriously, she wonders if there is a matter of correctness involved, or whether both ways are equally correct.
The American way is
One
the only way.
American, the other European. Betty wishes she were as certain of that point as she is of how her knife should be placed. Bob has never heard of zigzag or continental ways of eating meat.
That's because
But he
Bob
is
is
on
a
the lookout
zigzagging
for such
degenerate.
things now. And as soon as he notices what Betty is doing, he is ready to follow her example, whether she is right or wrong. He uses his left hand all right, even if he does take an oversized bite. Bob congratulates himself on trying a new way. He and Betty have a lot to learn. At least there are no
That smug
further
smile.
mishaps as the meat course is finished and the table cleared for dessert. Bob is happy now and is proud of himself.
Aside from Bob licking all of the leftovers, of
Formal
course.
parties like this are really enjoyable when one isn't afraid of doing the wrong thing.
And maybe you should stop worrying about
Bob has reached
zigzagging.
the point where he feels that since his intentions are good and he is watching himself, that all is well. If you just try to figure out what is the reason for each rule of etiquette, you find that the rules are sensible. After all, correct manners are simply the way one person shows his consideration for another. In other words, proper manners are your way of showing common politeness. As far as Bob is concerned, this is the best birthday he has ever had. And to top it off, a big birthday cake that Betty has made for him.
Bob has very little excitement in his life and will grow up to be a librarian. Really.
For the cake is a symbol, like the whole dinner, of friendship. A very delicious symbol of the regard that Betty and her friends hold for Bob.
But Betty doesn't hold Bob in high regard because the cake is actually made out of cow pie in disguise.
The lighting of the birthday cake with candles is an old custom, and so is the blowing out of the candles. But do you suppose the placing of the candles at the side is a modern touch of avoiding possible germs being blown on the cake?
Yes.
Serving the meat course upset Bob. Apparently serving the cake has its difficulties too.
Well, the hostess just wants to avoid another spoon
helping
incident.
Bob. She worried about leaving the table to bring in the cake in the first place. Betty wondered if the serving should be left to the housekeeper. What would you say?
It doesn't
There is
matter.
no denying that Bob needs help. He is having trouble with the serving implements again.
No,
Do you
Bob.
think
No,
you might
not
be
the
able to
spoon. The
figure out
cake
from
knife. Use the
shape and
cake
the
knife.
size of the blades
Put the
which
spoon
he
away,
uses?
Bob.
Cutting and serving your own birthday cake would seem to be a pleasure. But could you actually do this any more gracefully than Bob is?
Yes, because I'm not a blithering
Betty's
idiot.
help may not be as great as she thinks. What of her reaching in front of Bob? And about
How
her
rude.
placing the dessert forks? Are these correct?
I don't see what's wrong with that.
Bob accompanies Betty to her place, assisting her with her chair before resuming his serving. He is at least trying to change his habits.
I'd laugh if Bob just pulls the chair away and she falls flat on her ass. Haha, made you sit.
And you notice? He forgot his napkin and sat on it.
No, not the napkin.
He is serving smoothly now and is not distracting his friends with his difficulties. They are free again to chat as they wish. And once again, the party is fun. Bob and Betty met more problems than they expected.
Fun. This is
We are
tense.
seeing people like Betty and Bob who want to entertain their friends, have good times together, forget that poor manners can really interfere with the fun of the party.
No, can
There
they?
is no fun in being worried, unsure, or ill at ease.
But you were all of those things throughout the entire party.
To face your problems, find out what the correct answer is, and then when you act in a way that you know for certain is correct, your mind is perfectly free. Of course, all this isn't accomplished just by wishing. There are still habits that have first to be detected and then broken.
Just watch Bob. He has all of the bad habits. Don't do what Bob does.
And lessons are all practical. Once you have formed correct habits in your manners, you will find that they give you a sense of confidence. That is a reward in itself.
And remember, don't be a
Our party
Bob.
is ending, but let's hope that for you it is, in another sense, just a beginning. As you think of Betty and Bob and their problems, compare your own manners. Don't forget that it is by their manners that polite people the world around show their consideration for one another. A dinner party is just one way of enjoying company of your friends.
And lots of worrying about your manners.
Good company, real enjoyment, that's what a dinner party is for.
The end. I feel like there should be a question mark here. And that was probably the most tense dinner party I've ever seen in a long time. I'll be doing a couple of these videos alone, hopefully getting better and better at them as we go along, and maybe I'll have some co-hosts if this generates some interest. And I don't know, here's a subscribe button, I guess. Click that. Watch some of these other videos too, they're pretty good.